Start karo? Okay. A very good morning to one and all. Children, first of all, heartiest congratulations that you have completed your 9 and you are now promoted to class 10. And so far, this year is of vital importance in your life, your whole career, because this is the time, this is the year, this is the session where you are going to face for your first board examination. So, good wishes for the upcoming board examinations, that is 2020-2021 session. And I know that this is a situation of pandemic which has created a pandemonium, that means a wild disorder. I know you are not happy because you are indoors, but I don't know, it's a boon in disguise for you, because the technology has revolutionized. It has been so upgraded that you are getting the facility of attending classes right from your residence, because the government has instructed all of us that in order to protect yourself from this virus is that to stay home and stay safe. Keeping in mind this, we have introduced e-classes or online classes, and now I am here. I am an assistant teacher of BURDWAN Model School. My name is Nasrin Begum, and I am here to teach you social science, and especially the part on democratic politics, that is democratic politics, the book 2, part 2, because in class 9 you are having democratic politics book 1 and this is book 2. So with all my good wishes, now I am going to start with the chapter, and the first chapter of your book on democratic politics. This is your book. This is chapter 1 for class 10 under CBSE curriculum. And chapter 1 is power sharing. This is your first chapter for your book on democratic politics, social science. Now, as for the word sharing, you can know that what is sharing. We all, from your very childhood, your parents, your elders have always taught you that sharing, is the best habit. So sharing is not only sharing of food, sharing of articles, sharing your sentiments, because we always know that sharing doesn't, the more you share, power is concerned, power can also be shared. Now, what is power sharing? In every country, you have different organizations, first, and then the government. You have different social groups. You have political parties. So what is power sharing? Power sharing is actually sharing of the government, the power of the country amongst all the various groups or organizations which are present within the country. Because if power is not properly shared, what will happen? There will be conflicts, there will be disputes, there will be clamors amongst the people, and the whole order of the country will be under stake. There will be a disorder, there will be you will find that there will be lawlessness in the country, and the government will be facing wild disorder, wild problems, to bring down the whole situation under control. So power sharing is actually sharing of power amongst the various organizations, social groups, political parties which are existing within the country for the better administration of the country. So in every country of the world, not at the highest level, even at the lowest level, you can find that there is sharing of power. For example, I'll give you one example. For example, you see that for understanding this particular concept of power sharing, you know, every school has its own annual programs every year. As for, you know, in our school, that is BURDWAN Model School, we have like a very big annual fest, that is a celebration that is known as to be as Mesmerize. Many people have gone there, enjoyed there. What happens, you know, usually the school management, what it does for the better management, so that the whole system goes on very properly, the work is divided. It is divided into several pockets so that the whole things goes on very smoothly. Even if you see Durga Puja celebration, you have committees, you have groups, you know. What happens, the work is getting, it is divided into several persons, several pockets, several groups. Why? So that every person, every group, they are working for the same initiative. The goal is the same. So that all of us, we are not overburdened and we can work out together, and we can finally, when we are landing up with all success. So power sharing is very important, whether you go for the highest level or at the grassroots level. Everywhere power is actually shared. Even in your family, the family from where everybody comes, which is the smallest unit in a society, you see that power is actually shared. How? Like your mother is supposed to do some work, your father is supposed to do some other work, you are also given with some other task, some function. So what happens, you know, the work is also distributed, divided. Power is also distributed or divided so that everybody can do their work properly, and the whole work is actually given a proper shape and a successful shape. Now we will see power sharing as goes your first chapter. Now, before starting on what is power sharing, I have given you an idea about power sharing. I want to give you examples of two countries of the world where there were actually issues of power sharing, and how both the countries have actually come to the solution of power sharing. There were conflicts within the country, there were fight for power, and how both the countries have actually come to a solution of power sharing. We'll give two examples. First of all is the country of Belgium. I suppose all of you have heard about the name of Belgium. You know, Belgium is a country. There, the population composition, of Belgium, you see it goes like this. 59% of the people who lived in the Flemish region, they spoke Dutch. They spoke the Dutch language. The 40% who lived in the region of Wallonia, they spoke French, and the remaining 1%, they spoke German. This was the ethnic composition of the people living in Belgium. That is 59, the majority part of the population, they lived in the Flemish region, they spoke the Dutch language, whereas the 40% who lived in the Wallonia region, they spoke French language, and the remaining 1% was the German language. They spoke German language. Whereas if you go to the capital city of Belgium, that is Brussels, the picture was quite different. What happened there? 80% of the people, they spoke French, whereas the remaining 20%, they spoke Dutch. You see a change in the scenario. Whereas in Belgium, the Dutch-speaking people were in a majority, followed by the French-speaking people, and then the negligible percentage was the German-speaking people. But if you go to the capital city of Belgium, that is Brussels, 80% of them were the French-speaking people and 20% of the people were Dutch-speaking people. Now you can see two opposite pictures in two different places, two important places. One Belgium proper and one is the capital city. Now the Belgian government, it came across a very difficult situation. In one place, one group is in a majority, and in another place, another group is in a majority. So this was a very critical situation. But you know, the Belgian government, it took a very wise and conscious step. What did it do? It had amended the constitution of Belgium 4 times. Why? In order to accommodate the differences which existed in two different places of Belgium, and they created a new Belgian constitution. And this Belgian constitution, you know what did it do? Various elements were included which provided that equal number of ministers or representatives would be included to the central legislature or the state legislatures from both French and Dutch speaking community. Equal number of ministers, no problem. Even at the central level as well as at the state level. No problem, no differences, no going into any kind of controversies. And a third government, which was known as the community government, third government or the community government was also created, which had members from both the community. So the Belgian government, very wisely, what it did it do? It had taken into the demands of both the French-speaking people and the Dutch-speaking people, and it had tried to accommodate the differences existing between both the communities without any kind of confrontation, any kind of contradiction, without any kind of controversy, without any kind of conflict. It had accommodated, and it had given rise to a constitution which had equal representatives from both the communities, and there was no disorder, no lawlessness in the country. And here you can find a very a way in which power was shared equally in a very peaceful manner among the two leading communities in Belgium. This is one example. Another example I will give you is that of another country. and this time it is Sri Lanka. Now, if I see again the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka, that means population, you can find differences. Let me divide it into two groups. One where the Sinhalese, who were the original of Sri Lanka. This was one group. Other were the Tamils who had migrated from India. You know, these people, they have mainly migrated from Tamil Nadu in India, and the main reason for their migration was that they have migrated in search of employment. And mainly they worked as plantation workers. You know what are plantation workers? That means, you know, Sri Lanka is very well known for its coffee and rubber production. So large estates. So they went there for in search of jobs for employment, and they were recruited there as plantation workers, and with their entire family they have migrated from India to Sri Lanka. So first one was that the Sinhalese people who were the original citizens of Sri Lanka, and the Tamils who had actually migrated. This was the first difference. Second difference was that Sinhala was the language, Sinhala language. The Sinhalese people, they spoke Sinhala language, whereas the people from Tamil Nadu, they spoke Tamil. These people, the Sinhalese people who were the original citizens of Sri Lanka, they spoke the Sinhala language, whereas the Tamils who had migrated from India, they spoke Tamil. The Sinhalese people, you know, they were Buddhist in faith. That means they followed Buddhism. That means Buddhism was their religion, whereas the Tamils were either Hindus or Muslims or Christians, and a few of them were like, you know, they were known as Pargas, Parsis, Vedas, but this percentage was less. Majority of them were actually either Hindus, Muslims or Christians. This was, you can see that both of them, they were completely different in their ethnic composition. This was the scenario. It was in the year 1956. The Sri Lankan government, you know what it did? It passed one act, and it wanted to make Sinhala language as the official language of Sri Lanka. So this created the problem. When Sinhala was going to be made the official language, people, the Tamils, were completely against it. There were other reasons also. Not only because Sinhala was going to be made the official language, these Sinhalese people, as they were the original citizens of Sri Lanka, you know, they got a number of opportunities and facilities from the Sri Lankan government in terms of jobs and education. Whereas the people of the Tamilian people were deprived of all these kinds of facilities. So they were having a grudge against the Sri Lankan government, and this grudge, it took a shape, it came out when the Sri Lankan government had made an official declaration that Sinhala would be made the official language of Sri Lanka. Now it was during this period you can find that the Tamils of Sri Lanka, now what did they do? They started protesting against the government of Sri Lanka. One group was born during that time, the LTTE group. What is this LTTE group? It is a terrorist or anti-national group. What do you mean by LTT? The Liberation Tigers of the Tamil Eelam. Now the question comes, what is Eelam? Eelam is, please, it means a separate state for the Tamils in Sri Lanka. So when this was the scenario, it was going like this. The people, the Tamil people who were there in Sri Lanka, one terrorist group, they were completely against the Sri Lankan government policies. They said that we want an Eelam. They demanded for an Eelam. And what is Eelam? It comes as a short question for you. 1 mark question, that what do you mean by an Eelam? Eelam is a separate state for the Tamils. You have to write this word. A separate state for the Tamils in Sri Lanka. And another group which came up, a terrorist group which was born during that juncture was the LTTE, the Liberation Tigers of the Tamil Eelam. Eelam is the separate state for the Tamils in Sri Lanka. Now, these LTTE groups, you know what they were doing? They were creating chaos, they were protesting, they were like, you know, everywhere they went, they used to ransack parts of Sri Lanka. There was complete disorder, lawlessness in the country, and the Sri Lankan government was not satisfied with this scenario or with this behavior of the Tamil people. So what did the Sri Lankan government do that time? The Sri Lankan government had written to the Indian government that it is your people, those who are creating all kinds of lawlessness in our country. So please send some peacekeeping force. Peacekeeping force, so that this peacekeeping force will go power those groups, those who within So the Sri Lankan government had asked the Indian government, he had sent a peacekeeping force to Sri Lanka for controlling the activities of the Tamils in Sri Lanka. Now, when these peacekeeping forces, they went, and what did they do? Why? They said that India is actually a part of, Tamilian people, they are actually a part of India. So instead of supporting them, what did they do? They have come to bring us under control, to suppress our demands. Instead of supporting us, what they are doing? They are trying to suppress us. They are trying to subdue our demands. So what happened? These people, you know, they started developing anti-Indian government sentiments, and as a result, we all know that the Rajiv Gandhi had become a victim of the LTTE group that is Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. That means he was killed by a human bomb, which was actually a plan by the LTTE terrorist groups. We all know that he became a victim of the bomb blast, that is the human bomb, which was used by the LTTE group members to kill Rajiv Gandhi. And this was actually why Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated, because of the grudge the people they had within themselves against the peacekeeping forces which was sent by the Indian government upon the request of the Sri Lankan government. So after this, the Sri Lankan government, what did they do? They ransacked whole of Sri Lanka and they tried to find out wherever they found the LTTE group members. They have either killed them, they have suppressed them, and they have brought them completely under control. And after this, the demand for a separate state in Sri Lanka for an Elam was completely gone. So here also is an example of power sharing. But here what had happened? Instead of going into any kind of understanding, adjustment, what did they do? The Sri Lankan government had taken help of the Indian government to suppress the demands of the Tamilian people. So here you find suppression, oppression, bringing them under control with a heavy hand. And thus the demand for a separate state for the Tamils in Sri Lanka was over. So you have two examples of power sharing. One is with Belgium, where there was accommodation, where there was adjustment was there, where there was cooperation, understanding, where power was shared equally between the French and the Dutch community, speaking community. Whereas in Sri Lanka you get an example where suppression was there, where they were completely done over with, and their particular demand of having a separate existence was completely dashed to the ground. These are the two examples. One example where a different system was taken, and in Sri Lanka another system was actually taken. So these are two examples of power sharing in different countries of the world. Now the question comes, why do we need power sharing, or why is Now before starting this particular topic, why is power sharing desirable? It's not only Belgium, it is not only Sri Lanka where issues of power sharing had actually taken place. You can find many more examples all over the world where there have been issues of power sharing. You can, one of the leading examples is that of America, where you have found about, not only America, you have the same problem was there in South Africa also, power sharing between the blacks and the whites. This is also a major issue in countries, that part of the world, where there was always a controversy between power sharing between the blacks and the whites, that is based on the skin color, which is known as apartheid or racism. So these kinds of issues of power sharing had taken place in different parts of the world at different times. Now the question comes, why is power sharing desirable? There are two reasons for it. One is prudential, another one is moral. What is prudential reason? Prudential reason is that in a country, you have various groups, social groups, communities, organizations, things like that. If you have proper sharing of power between them, what will not be there? There will be no conflicts between them. In order to avoid conflicts, because wherever there is conflict, remember, the whole country will be in a turmoil. There will be no proper administration, law and order will be at stake. Because whenever there is, when one group is deprived of power, what will happen? A kind of suspicion, a kind of doubt, a kind of grudge will be created. So what will happen? This kind of grudges, they create suspicion. And whenever there is suspicion, there will be conflicts, things like that. There will be lawlessness in the country. So prudential reason is that if power is properly shared, there will be no conflict and the government or the administration of the country will move in a smooth order. And what is the moral reason? The moral reason is that in a country, if power is shared, then every group, people will have the feeling that they are parts of the country's government. A special feeling will be developed that yes, I am also a part of this. I do have a responsibility towards that, towards my country, towards my government. And what happens, if power is properly shared, what will happen? If power is not there at a particular point, if all the powers are concentrated, if power is concentrated in same hands, what happen, what will happen? There will be misuse, abuse of power. When a person, gets all the power, or a body or an organization enjoys all the power, what will happen? There will be a time when power will be misused or abused. So it's better, instead of concentrating it into one hand, divide it into several hands. Divide it into several hands. So when you are dividing the power, what will happen? All will keep a watch upon the activities of the other, and in this way the whole system will move in a smooth manner. Nobody will be having this opinion, that this feeling that power is being misused, because all will, at the moment, they will try to keep a watch upon the activities of the other, and in this way the whole system will move in proper order. So power sharing is very, very desirable, especially in all the democratic countries of the world. The more, and because democracy is all about people. Democracy, as you have already studied in your part of class 9, democracy is always related with people. And whenever there is power sharing, when you are having power sharing, you are involving more and more people. This is the reason, moral reason. When you are involving more and more people, what will happen? That will be a proper democracy. You can say that yes, the democracy is working in a proper manner. So power sharing is always desirable at all levels, not only from the center, even at the lowest level, at the grassroots level also, you need to have power sharing, because if power is shared, there will be no conflicts and the whole system will move in a particular order, in a beautiful rhythm, without any kinds of disputes, without any kinds of clamors, anything. So the reason why power sharing is so important. And in fact, if you have power sharing, the government view which you have, it is always a stable government. The government will always be a stable one, because we all know that. Why stable? Because nobody will be after one, because this is stable. Because one is keeping a watch upon the other, one is keeping a watch upon the other. So what will happen? A balance is maintained and the government is also stable. So power sharing is always desirable, or what you know as not power sharing, or it is also known as decentralization. Decentralization. As I've told you, if this is centralization, then when you are dividing it, it is decentralization. Every case, whether it is a small picnic which is arranged by you, you see, if you give all the responsibility to one person, that one person will not do it, that person will try to do the work single-handedly, but it will not be that smoothly if that particular work is divided among several heads. Always, you know what happens when any work, any mission which you take up, if it is properly divided, it comes out to be a successful venture. So why is power sharing desirable? Next we move to another topic, which should be the last topic of this particular chapter, that is the first chapter on power sharing. How is power shared? For first one, you know, the government is made up of 3 organs. Government is made up of 3 organs: legislature, executive, judiciary. Every country has a government. At the head of the country you have the constitution, which is very important, which is known as to be the supreme law of the land. The constitution mentions that the government should be made up of 3 organs: legislature, executive and judiciary. And it is the constitution which has clearly mentioned that what should be the powers of the legislatures. For example, this is powers of the legislature: law making, followed by law execution by the executive, followed by law interpretation and adjudication by the judiciary. So the way the arrows which I have given you, you see it goes in a straight line. It goes in a straight line. So when it goes in a straight line like this, it is known as horizontal division of powers. It is known as horizontal division of powers. It goes in a straight line. Next one. You know what is a federation? Next chapter only you have. Federation is a country which has 2 sets of governments: central government and state government. So in a federation, you know, how are powers divided? By the constitution, obviously. The powers are divided in which way? First of all, the central government, maximum powers, followed by the state governments. And the state governments, you know, under the state government you have a number of local self-government. It is a part of the state government. And then the local self-government. Powers are divided in this way. So how is it going? It is going in the form of a line. So this is known as vertical division of powers. So this way is also another way of dividing powers or sharing of powers. This is known as vertical division of powers. The other one is known as the horizontal division of power. Other than this, in a country, you have number of socio-religious, language and other groups. Powers are also shared amongst them. Powers are also shared amongst them. And last of all is that political parties, any democracy will not be there. Political parties, pressure groups, interest groups and others, powers are also shared amongst them. So if we recapitulate the whole chapter, if we try to put the whole chapter, first of all, this is a first chapter of your syllabus for democratic politics, that is civics, for your class 10. And this chapter is completely on power sharing, and we see that power is shared into so many groups. Why power sharing is important? As I've given you the example that if power is shared properly, what will happen? There will be no conflicts, there will be no disputes, as you have seen the case of Belgium. Whereas when you have seen the case of Sri Lanka, there also what happened? In order to solve the issue of problem, power sharing, what did they do? They have taken hands to suppression, oppression, ill-treating people. They have subdued their interest, and the people were actually, their demands were not fulfilled. And these kinds of power sharing problems you will find in many countries of the world. And the thing is that power sharing is very important because it has a prudential reason behind it. It has a moral reason behind it, because no government in fact cannot work properly without proper sharing of powers. Leave the government, it's a bigger thing, even at lower levels also you find that whatever work you are doing, in the smallest to smallest work venture which you are taking up, if there is no proper power sharing, what will happen? No work will come to its final destination properly. There will be a kind of suspicion, oh, that person is doing more, I am doing more, why should I? So these kinds of feelings should not come, because whenever these kinds of feelings they try to get, they are born, what happened? The whole system will be crippled, it will fall down. So it's same for for a country also. In a country, so that a country can work properly in a proper direction with so much of people, so many diversities within them, we need to have proper power sharing. And this power sharing is done by the constitution, and we have seen about what is the vertical power sharing, what is horizontal power sharing, how power is shared between different groups as well as different political parties, which are major instruments in a democracy. This is all about your first chapter on power sharing for class 10. Thank you children, and have a very nice day. I hope you have understood the chapter.